Well, Charles, welcome.
That Fortel guy was pretty good at making projections.
He knows what he's talking about. It's another Sunday here with Charles. Thank you for joining me. We're going to be talking about the Sisterhood of the Traveling Pantsuit.
Well, congratulations to the art department. I mean, that's a beautiful job there.
Yeah, they're working very hard there on the various elements that we have. Now, Charles, before we get too much into the sisterhood there are a number of things we wanted to discuss. Now, this is a little bit out of the ordinary. I know you don't get too into Bitcoin and all of that, but it's back on the huge upswing. One Bitcoin is worth $4,318. That's pretty impressive, I think. You're not into cryptocurrency, correct?
No, I mean, I think it's yet another data point underscoring the idea that there's a lot of dirty money that needs a home, and there are only so many places that you can wash dirty money. Precious metals is one, real estate can be another, maybe Bitcoin's another. So, it's just very simple.
For laundering.
Yeah, when the demand for laundering and feelings of insecurity and it's about the instability in the system, when the demand for something greatly exceeds its supply, prices go up. It's that simple.
And so obviously there's demand for Bitcoin there. We'll have to see where that goes. It's been said by many other people, of course, that it is in fact a money laundering mechanism, a lot of wealth exiting China through Bitcoin, etc. Now, of course, the great Fortel has given us some amazing predictions, but you seem to be developing some of these other alter egos that we've seen, and we're going to be talking quite a lot today about one of the mysteries that was uncovered by Sherlock Ortel or Charles Holmes, whichever you might prefer to discuss. We were downtown the other day looking for the amazing hidden secret location of the Clinton Foundation, the 77 Water Street location. And what do you want to brief us on with that, Charles?
Well, that's a great question, Watson. I mean, Jason. There's a theory that some articulate to really, I think, distract from the underlying reality that this is all ancient history and it doesn't matter because it's, something that may have happened in 2011 is past the statute of limitations, and even if it was a crime,
You mean having the hidden office at 77 Water?
Really soliciting donations from a hidden office without disclosing it in the various state and federal and foreign registration forms, it would be the issue, the main issue. But before we spend too much time on this, the thing to remember is there's a trap here. It's a trap that was laid in 2015 by somebody I know. And that is, a certain somebody suggested that the Clinton Foundation would really need to refile their tax returns.
And who would that somebody have been?
I don't know. He's some kind of a cousin of Fortel. Initially they said there's no reason to do that, but they made the wrong decision, a series of bad decisions. And so on November 16, 2015, they refiled tax returns going back to 2010. And the way tax returns work, to file your return for 2010, you actually have to make a comment about the beginning of the year, which was December 31st, 2009. And by filing this on November 16th, 2015, this now puts those ancient tax returns squarely inside the statute of limitations for tax fraud. And, so they made a huge, in my mind, huge mistake refiling the returns the way they did without correcting the audit.
Charles, is there anything that the Clintons do that isn't fraudulent, felonious, criminal? I mean, every single time we meet, you're telling me about just almost anything they've done seems to be literally against the law.
At least they're consistent.
I mean, come on, they're not stupid, right? I mean, why? Who's advising them? You sent over a bunch of memos here from WikiLeaks. We should start looking at these.
Okay.
This is
Well, this is a good one to start with, and I guess that's why we're starting with it.
Right.
In this one, we need to go all the way to the bottom, because this particular one incorporates a string of emails. And this is the Podfather responding, but if you take it all the way to the bottom, you'll see how it starts out. All right, there you go. So this is an email from Laura Graham.
Chief Operating Officer.
All right, but we talked about this, I think, in our last meeting. Laura Graham is the Chief Operating Officer who we, at another juncture, will take the audience through the sad saga of Laura Graham, where Doug Band is claiming that Laura Graham was going to drive her car into the water because she was so concerned about what was going on. This happened several weeks after.
And she did, though, didn't she?
Several times, apparently. She was so distraught. Now, Laura Graham, from what I can tell, is not somebody with a deep bench of educational experience. She's promoted into, which is the Clinton pattern, that when you have a key position, that you want somebody who won't buck you, who will just shut up and do what you want and not check the rules too carefully. You put somebody like Laura Graham in that job, or Andrew Kessel in the Chief Financial Officer job, or these various interns. So this is a very cagey email. The very clever Laura Graham sends it to Uma Abedin, who, by the way, at this point in time, is holding down 4 jobs. She's personally being paid on the payroll. Just, if you could just stop for a second. Sorry. She's on the payroll of the Clinton family. She's on the payroll of the Clinton Foundation. She's on the payroll of the taxpayer, and she's on the payroll of this crazy so-called investment bank, Teneo.
Wait, why the Clinton family? What is she doing? Just like a personal assistant or something?
The mind reels. I've got no clue what she was doing for the family. And then they CC. Graham wants to be really clever. She CCs it to Diane Reynolds, and then she writes this Uma.
Oh yeah, Diane.
There's Diane and John and the Podfather.
Why did I think it was Debbie Reynolds?
I don't know. You keep doing that. It gets stuck in your mind. Anyway, so this is a request to Uma from Laura saying, listen, we've got this space that's come available on the 2nd floor at 77 Water Street. And if you go a little bit further down, let's see, where does it say? Yeah, here. It would be great if we could arrange a call to discuss the secretary's needs for this week, and I can have John and or Bob join as needed.
Who are those guys? Podesta?
Podesta, I would guess, and Bob's probably Bob Harrison as a guest from the Clinton Global Initiative. So, this is space, and you see this as well. Goldman, because of their relationship with us, is delaying the drafting of a lease for another interested party until they get a better sense from us, but they can't hold them off too much longer. Now, Goldman Sachs is a very big firm with lots of interests.
They own this 77 Water Street.
I think they either own or they're primary tenant, but the issue with foundation reporting, with Clinton Foundation reporting, what you have to do is you have to disclose all your, quote, related party transactions. So if you have a significant donor, like the Goldman Foundation, getting involved with transactions such as Laureate Education, which was a leveraged buyout, where by this point in time, Bill Clinton was the honorary chancellor of Laureate, making over $3 million a year, and they're donating the Clinton Global Initiative, they're giving the secret office space, they're also paying speech fees along the way. You got to disclose all of that, all those related party transactions, because what the laws are trying to get to is whether this foundation is actually being operated for the private benefit of the Clinton family. And if you don't disclose all these related party transactions, you're never going to figure it out. But the scale of these payments, the Laureate payment, for example, which was a 5-year deal. Now, I don't know if it was a year-to-year deal or whether it was contemplated as an original 5-year agreement in 2010. But if you enter into a 5-year contract where you ultimately pay Bill Clinton $17.6 million for his work as honorary chancellor to a for-profit education operation that is financed, it's a gigantic multi-billion-dollar deal financed by Goldman, where Goldman has investments in that deal. Goldman could lose money. Nobody likes to lose money, but people really don't like to lose billions of dollars. And so, this whole Laureate relationship, which was also a joint venture partner, and it's tough for a for-profit entity to legally be a joint venture partner with a charity, Clinton Global Initiative. Nonetheless, they tried to do that.
Why do they do that? Just to put Clinton on it and give the university more credibility?
Well, they created something called Clinton Global Initiative University. We talked about that in our last meeting. And you know, under the law, Eric Schneiderman, who is, you know, he's basically, I don't know what the right phrase would be, but he's schizophrenic, I guess is the right phrase. That, you know, if there's a crime and it involves Donald Trump, potentially you've got to go after it. You've got to disclose the investigation before it's even reached its conclusion.
Right.
But if it's a Clinton, you know, you let it go.
There's
right?
no there.
And so you had Trump University, which had not registered. New York state laws are very strict. The Department of Education is quite strict. The Clinton Global Initiative University was never registered, as far as I could tell, anywhere. And it's different than Trump University in the sense that Clinton Global Initiative University started at around 2007-8 timeframe. And there you had, it operated on many college campuses in the United States. Mm-hmm. Bill was being paid a lot of money. Mm-hmm. The scale of the Clinton Global Initiative University, you can only really see it, any kind of metrics I've been able to find, are in the annual reports on Form 990 for the Clinton Global Initiative, what I call New Clinton Global Initiative, 2010, 11, 12, gives you a sense that the total amount of money spent by that supposed joint venture was less than $2 million a year. So in your charitable works, you're spending $2 million, but meanwhile, Bill is making $3 million. That's material. That's more than an insubstantial private gain.
How can he be making more?
Because it's paid sideways. In other words, it's not being paid out of the joint venture. It's being Laureate over here is.
Is the whole thing a money laundering scheme? Is that what it is?
Well, it looks like it's a corrupt RICO money laundering slush fund to me.
Wow. And you said that the purchase was a leveraged buyout. What's the significance of that?
So in a leveraged buyout, the transaction came together between 2006 and 2007. And it's, strictly speaking, it's called a going private transaction. That's where insiders, who is in the publicly traded Laureate at the time, there was a management team.
Right.
And that management team, it's not Boris Becker, Douglas Becker.
Tennis on the mind.
Yeah, Douglas Becker was with another bunch of guys. These are guys who, the official story on these guys, which may be true, but it doesn't make a lot of sense to me, is they went to private school, Gilman, I think it was, which is a very good boys, or it might be co-ed now, private school near Baltimore somewhere.
Right.
And we all understand how people love it, your parents love it, when they spend a tremendous amount of money on you to go to an expensive private school, and you say, I've got an idea. I'm going to turn down, the first story was University of Pennsylvania, but then it magnified, I'm going to turn down Harvard to go work in Computerland as a stock clerk.
Who did that?
Or the equivalent, Douglas Becker. That was.
Why did he do that?
Well, who knows? The theory that's being sold, that's out there is that, he followed what Bill Gates did. Bill Gates dropped out of Harvard, so he's going
to work at Computerland?
No, to found. Right, exactly. And so I don't think that there's been enough diligence. And I note recently that Doug Becker, agreed to step down as CEO of Laureate, which is deeply suspicious to me. I wonder why. I've read some of the agreements, the long-term agreements that you can find on the SEC, that basically gave Becker and his insider colleagues a sweetheart deal in this buyout. So it's a public company, with debt capacity. They leverage the company up, and they use the debt capacity of the company to buy out the public shareholders, and they run it as a highly leveraged transaction. And this was one of those, wrong way Mr. Peabody kind of transactions where, they thought it was a great deal. Becker and his team really, I would argue, outsmarted most of the people on Wall Street, including Goldman Sachs, Stevie Cohen, who's a tough investor, did SAC Capital, Paul Allen, a whole bunch of other people. They announced this transaction, and it closed, I want to say, around August 2007, which, if you remember back in that time frame, I think April 2007 was when Bear Stearns, that fund blew up.
Well, I was busy moving out to LA thinking about Avatar getting made and getting back into the 3D game, so I wasn't really...
Well, I better clue you in then. All right.
Well, because you see, this is what occurs to me as you talk about this. You're saying things that I personally believe go over most people's heads, and it was interesting to hear you say that they tricked even people on Wall Street. These types of transactions seem to me obviously designed to be so complicated that people just don't even know what's going on.
Well, actually, going private transactions started in earnest. They've gone for a long history, actually, but they really came to the fore in the 80s, early 80s, and a team called KKR. Which
Wait
is
a minute. That's
Henry Kravis and
yeah, but that's where Petraeus works.
exactly. And so anyway, so KKR was one of the sponsors of this buyout of Laureate. So you're talking about the cream of the crop. And what happened in that time frame while you were out in Hollywood is that Wall Street super overheated. One of the signs for me of it being way over the top is when I saw another Wall Street Sharpie, Steve Schwartzman, have his birthday that was so over the top and outrageous, and how expensive it was, and the party in June, I think it was, of 2007. I was just then coming back to the city, and I literally rushed back to the city saying, "This is it. This is going straight to hell." Laureate closes in August of 2007. The world blows up. The financial world blows up.
Yeah.
Now Laureate has a ton of debt. It's got angry sponsors probably, and Henry Kravis. It's got all kinds of problems. So they needed to, in my view, bring it together and ideally sell it to the public. Once Barack Obama and Geithner and others stabilized.
So the TARP, you mean that?
No. Just what happened was it closed. In my world of banking, a lot of people, deal makers will just celebrate the closing of a transaction. But investors understand the only way you get a return is by you close the purchase and then you got to sell out, right? So these Sharpie firms like KKR, which is an excellent firm, long experience. The partners are billionaires now. They set the standard, frankly, for how to do this. It closes in trouble. They have a lot of money behind them. And now they got to figure out, what do we do next? Now, Laureate was scattered to the four corners of the globe. I mean, it was it had a U.S. online business, but a lot of international campuses in crazy countries. I think you can look it up. From memory, I think one of their schools was the Saudi Arabian Beauty School, which that might be an interesting one. But anyway, so they needed to stabilize that investment, and as a guest, they thought that having Bill Clinton serve as, quote, honorary chancellor of Laureate
gives them some credibility or whatever.
Right.
It's good college for criminals. So, do we know any graduates of Laureate?
Well, not so much.
Okay.
And actually, this is one area where I agree with the Obama administration. The Obama administration was very aggressively against the notion of for-profit universities, and I believe one of them that they went after was Corinthian, and there was another one I forget that they went after. Because after all, when you think about...
Hey, look who that is.
I know. There's a man who doesn't think about himself. But when you think about the idea of sending your child or somebody comes to you and says, look, I could go to SUNY, which is not for profit, State University of New York. Actually, my daughter went there, the engineering school, Thomas Watson School. It's a great school. Or I could go to this place, Laureate, where KKR and Stevie Cohen and Paul Allen, they're trying to make as much money as possible off this, and there's a big profit motive that it must resonate throughout the school. And meanwhile, they have enough spare change that they can pay a very busy person, in theory, Bill Clinton, $3.2 million for part-time work per year.
What work did he do actually for them? I mean, it seems like he probably was just hanging out.
Probably. I mean, they have a lot of international campuses. They've got
good access to the student body.
To mentor, to mentor. He's never had any difficulties with interns. But,
well, we digress a bit, though. We want to talk some more about WikiLeaks.
All right. So, what we're trying to do here is give the audience a chance, and at the end of this broadcast, we will be providing links so that you can take time to go over these memos and see what we're talking about. But behind the optics of this Sisterhood of the Traveling Pantsuit of Hillary and Uma and Chelsea and various other, in theory, noble women and their men doing noble work around the world, WikiLeaks has done us a service. And last year, right before the election, a large number of the missing emails were revealed. So far as I can tell, nobody's said that they were fraudulent.
They've been cryptographically verified, as a matter of fact.
All of them, or?
I believe so. WikiLeaks has a 100% perfect record of never releasing anything fake.
So what we're doing now is sort of picking apart for the audience some memos that you really want to read and consider at your leisure. Mm-hmm. Now, I got involved. One of the things that really, was important in my thinking to decide to invest the time and money to expose this was when I saw the real story, in my view, of what they're doing with this supposed fight against HIV/AIDS.
Right.
Now, this is an extremely incriminating memo in my mind, dated the 8th of December, 2011, which is right around the time the French government has, which is the largest donor,
to the Clinton, to the
whole Clinton Foundation, by far.
The French government is.
The French government, through an intermediate step, which is a company called, a not-for-profit called Unitate.
Oh, right.
They've sent 600 million or so towards the Clinton Foundation, which is out of $2 billion.
Why do they want to do that? Just to have influence with the Clintons?
A lot of people wonder. Let's hope people will figure out what happened here. But, but yeah. By the way, this is one that we'll get to that later, I suppose. But this is very interesting. This is an angry email from Ira Magaziner. Apparently, Bill Clinton on World AIDS Day had made some remarks that upset Ira. Mm. And the headline is that when you go through this, what Ira seems to be suggesting, the way I read it, is that the Clinton Foundation agreed to sort of run interference for the big branded HIV/AIDS drug people to say, look, if you help us internationally, right, we won't put pressure on you to lower the cost of HIV/AIDS drugs inside the United States of America. Now, that to me strikes me the polar opposite of what a foundation is supposed to do. A foundation is supposed to stand in the shoes of government, lessen the burdens of government. We could talk about Bernie Sanders, and we could talk about his single payer, or I guess he pronounced it what, single payer? But he has a point. Here, these branded drug companies have incredibly fat profit margins.
I can't believe you're saying something positive about Bernie Sanders.
Yeah, something. There's always something good you can find. And I like the way he says, that must have been some speech. But
he sounds like Barney Rubble.
But, here we see Ira Magaziner apparently saying that, what this HIV/AIDS operation in Boston, unregulated, may have been doing was making it easier for branded and U.S. drug companies to keep the prices of HIV/AIDS drugs high in the U.S.
Seems like something the foundation should also not want to do.
No, if the idea is to bring the cost of HIV/AIDS drugs down, I don't think you cover yourself in glory by saying, I'll tell you what we're going to do. In the market where people can actually afford these drugs, we're going to continue to make these drugs extremely expensive because the U.S. government is going to pay for indigent people to get these drugs, and we'll just put this on the backs of our grandchildren, borrow ever more money, so fat cat drug companies can make tons of money. And by the way, we're going to let these drug companies book their profits internationally in tax havens like Ireland and other places, so they're not even going to pay any U.S. taxes. That to me does not sound like an argument that would fly very far.
All over the place.
In front of the Bernie Sanders crew. And if we're trying to figure out what happened in the election in 2016, it's possible, it's conceivable, I should say, that some of the Berniacs, both bros and sisters, would see a memo like this and say, the Clintons are getting paid fat speeches by Wall Street. They're getting paid fat book contracts by media conglomerates.
Right.
They're getting paid fat speeches by these drug companies. What are we really doing here? Are we deceiving ourselves?
Wasn't there also an issue with the Clinton Health Access Initiative where the HIV/AIDS drugs that were sent to Africa or some countries in Africa or Haiti or wherever they were sending them, they were like half dosage and quarter dosage, generic, off-brand, like not even helping the people. The whole thing was just a big scheme to make money.
And this is one where the crowdsource community really needs to get engaged. The black, if you have time, Marsha Blackburn, the wonderful congressperson from Tennessee, her staff and she both dogged the Clinton Foundation, the IRS, the FTC, Department of Justice, to say, why aren't there real investigations? They began doing this in May of 2016. It's when I became aware of it. I think they also did something in the preceding year. But they put out a report, I want to say in September 17th or so, 2016, around then. I may have the date wrong. Where they flagged the issue of this crooked drug company called Ranbaxy.
Right.
That you referred to.
They're from India or Pakistan?
India. And what they had done, the world still doesn't understand the depth of the depravity here, but the Clinton Foundation, the William J. Clinton Presidential Foundation, entered into...
kind of foundation.
And it sounds pretty impressive to me. Entered into an agreement in October of 2003 to promote the sale of Ranbaxy products around the world. Now, there are so many problems with that.
Yeah.
The first is that the William J. Clinton Presidential Foundation in 2003 in no way, shape, or form was authorized to do any international work validly by the IRS, any state, or any international body. So that's step one. Step two, Ira Magaziner and William J. Clinton in 2003 were neither officers, directors. Both arguably could be deemed people in position to exercise significant influence and therefore would be trapped by the reporting requirements. But anyway, a foundation certainly cannot be a business development agent for an international drug company.
That seems
particularly
crazy.
One who we would learn by August of 2004, they would ultimately admit in court proceedings that dragged on that through August of 2004, Ranbaxy had no ability to actually test any of its drugs anywhere in the world, yet they sold hundreds of millions of drugs, including smaller amounts of HIV/AIDS drugs, which were purchased by donors to the Clinton Foundation and distributed around the world.
He looks like he's reaching out to accept tips from these gentlemen.
Exactly.
Okay, so the next one, Charles, that we wanted to discuss was this.
Oh, yeah, this is an important one. If you go to the attachments file there on the right.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I've got it as a PDF for us to look at, I think.
No.
No?
This is different.
Okay.
You may have it, but this is the zip thing. Do you have that? I don't think you do.
No. All right.
So if we look at, if we can pull that one up,
Yeah.
once it's processed in the magic machine.
You can keep riffing while I...
All right, we got the
Oh, this
wizard
is
at work here, the technical wizard,
the board
award-winning.
binder. Oh, it's a lot of PDFs in there. Which one would you like to see?
The one that says board minutes. It's on the right-hand side about, you see that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay, now this is interesting, okay?
Mm-hmm.
We look here and we see December 20th, 2011. Now, assuming this is accurate, and this is not a forgery, there was a board meeting held December 20th, 2011. These minutes are being distributed in 2012 at the annual meeting of the Clinton Foundation. Here we see that they agreed the meeting started at 3 p.m. and the directors present were three: Chelsea, Lindsay, Bruce Lindsay, and Terry McAuliffe. Okay? Now,
That's your favorite guy.
and here we have President William J. Clinton. And I didn't realize that president was an honorific title that you get for the rest of your life. I mean, I guess we've become a dictatorship. But
I think I knew that. You always call him Mr. President.
I don't think that's true.
Oh, really?
No. There can only be one president at a time. But anyway, so he was allowed to sit in this meeting. Now, why is that significant? Also at this time, and just if you stop there for a sec, sorry. Also at this time, there was another thing, you mentioned this Clinton Health Access Initiative, which had been created September 29th, 2009. And so operated 2009, had a balance sheet on December 31st, 2009, operated during 2010, and Chai in 2011 put together a filing which it ultimately amended. The significance here is that Bill Clinton was chairman of Chai, Bill Clinton, and Chelsea Clinton was very much involved with Chai. Depending on the date, we'll find out when she became a director of Chai. But there really are no independent directors here, right? They took the largest piece of the Clinton Foundation on December 31st, 2009, which was something called by the same acronym, but it's slightly different name, Clinton HIV/AIDS Initiative, also Chai, all right? So they take the largest piece of that thing on December 31st, 2009, and they spirit it out of the Clinton Foundation into a new entity where Bill Clinton and Ira Magaziner are made chairman and vice chairman effectively for life of this new entity. There's no independence in that transaction. And also, just to compound the felonies, they submit on December 31st, 2009, a false and materially misleading application to the IRS on Form 1023, stating that this Chai, this Clinton Health Access Initiative, was not a successor to any preceding company, when of course it was. So this shows you here that at this meeting, there were no independent directors, if you know the other piece of the history. And then we can keep on going down a little bit.
Well, but wait, there's one other interesting thing that I've just noticed from looking at this, Charles. The other day, when you and I went over to 77 Water Street, we spoke to someone over there who was like a security guard or something, and I'm going to bring that up so we can actually play that for people who may have missed it. But she said, the security guard said, that she'd been working there for 7 years, so she would have been there since 2010. This meeting took place 2011. She also said that the Clinton Foundation had been there for only a year or two and that it had moved out a year ago, meaning, from what she was telling us, the earliest it was there was sort of like 2015. But yet here's a meeting happening as far back as
20 December 2011.
So what do you make of that?
Well, you know, sometimes people who work as security guards in front of an office building are not necessarily that sophisticated when it comes to understanding foundation stuff. So perhaps her memory's, you know, not that great.
Well, would you be interested in seeing that portion of the clip where we actually went in there?
Sure.
Okay, let me run that so people who haven't seen it yet can have a look. So this was where we went and visited 77 Water.
Is the Clinton Foundation here?
They used to be here.
They left?
Like a year ago?
They left
More
you?
than a year ago, yeah.
Right.
They're like in Midtown. How are you?
How long were they here?
Like a year.
Really? I think they got here in 2011.
No, they were still in Harlem. They just came here for a little bit and then they moved to 34th. Was it 34th?
There was one office they had in 34th Street.
That's where they all moved. They were here for like a year, maybe two the most, because it was just interns.
Just interns then?
Yeah, it was just interns.
And you were here then? Oh, cool. All right, we'll go midtown and find them.
How long have you been working here?
7 years.
You ever see Bill or Hillary come in? You did?
Bill, Hillary, the daughter, Lerner was here, Uma. Say hi.
Well, who was better behaved, Bill or Hillary?
Hillary.
Hillary's
Better behaved?
I mean, you basically call her out right there, Charles. You asked her if she remembers seeing Bill Clinton and Chelsea and Hillary and everything. So I don't know. That's a little confusing to me.
Well, I think there's little question that the Clinton Foundation began to have employees at 77 Water Street during 2011. There are multiple emails to that effect.
Right.
And now we have this board meeting. If this board meeting did not occur at 77 Water Street, then, you know, what board meeting did they actually have in 2011? We see here underneath point 1 and point 2, we see they had a special board meeting on July 3rd, 2011 in Aspen, Colorado, you know, because that's a low-cost place. It's not expensive to have people go out there in July. And this is right around the time that Dennis Cheng, who had been deputy chief of protocol at the State Department, was a longtime associate of the Clintons, though he was a young man, is a young man.
Yeah, that's that guy who had like gone to the London School of Economics, and his interests were London School of Economics.
Right, right, and the Clinton Foundation.
Right.
And so here what had happened is they had this board meeting out in Aspen, an interim board meeting, as a guest to talk about.
No votes were taken. I guess they were
Yeah,
busy.
you wouldn't
skiing.
want to get involved doing business out there. I mean,
They got a nice Nobu there. Maybe they were, running up the bill at Nobu.
and I'm sure they got in a Scooby-Doo van and drove everybody out there back, to save money. But as a guest, they were beginning to think then about how to monetize the contacts of the Clintons to raise an endowment for the Clinton Foundation. And that's why Dennis Cheng I'm just guessing now, Dennis Cheng was spirited out of the Secretary of State's office into the Clinton Foundation and possibly down there at Water Street. Then you see, forget point 3 and point 4, but we keep on going down. That's all just... Now here, Mr. Kessel presented the 1990 and audited financial...
The 990.
990, right, and audited financial, should be audited financial statements for fiscal year 2010. The board approved both. Okay. The audited financials for the largest pieces of the Clinton Foundation were for CHI, for the Clinton Global Initiative, for something called Alliance for a Healthier Generation, and for a new entity, Clinton Bush Haiti. Okay? This is not for the Clinton Foundation, but for these spinouts. Every single one of those, it has a false and materially misleading opening position where they claim none of those new spinouts had any assets at the beginning of the year, which is total rubbish. And as far as the 990 is concerned, when you liquidate pieces, when you liquidate CHI, when you liquidate Clinton Global Initiative, when you liquidate these other things, you have to actually explain all of that in the 990, which is the annual tax form like our 1040 personally for a charity. You have to explain all that in schedules, and the schedules are very specific, and there's strict rules. You cannot, present a tax form that is materially misleading, which is exactly what I would argue this whole process was. But Mr. Kessel, the chief financial officer, presents these forms, and they approve them supposedly on December 20th, 2011. Now, what's the problem with that? The final filing deadline is November 15th, 2011.
So it's late.
So you can't, under New York law, you're not allowed to file your tax forms past the final filing deadline.
And what happens if you do?
Well, what you do is you get a friendly attorney general and a friendly governor who decide to turn off the prosecutorial interest in going after the Clinton Foundation. That's the way you handle it when you're going, not Gangnam style, but Clinton style.
What would happen if, let's say, I started a 501c3 charity and I did something fraudulent, like, I don't know, maybe solicit $250,000 in a state where I hadn't registered to do that, or file my 990 late, or what would happen to me if I did that?
Well, you would be thrown away like Corinne Brown. I mean, Corinne Brown is...
Thrown away, what do you mean?
You would go to federal prison for a long period of time and you would face gigantic fines. So in the case of Representative Corinne Brown, who is in Florida, same approximate age as Hillary Clinton, running for office in 2016 for a special seat in Florida,
right.
$800,000 slush fund for like 4 years. She does get prosecuted, indicted, in July, I think, June, July of 2016, during her election, whereas Comey says, oh, no, it's Clinton's. We can't.
Yeah, why did they do that to her?
Well, because the law does not seem to be applied even-handedly, even though we have something, I believe, is it the Second Amendment, which is equal protection under the law? So, in this case, what we see here, actually, I would argue that this document alone is prima facie evidence of gross negligence, and we'll get to why that is. If you keep going down, they go into executive session, they don't tell us what that means, right? And then they wind the thing up, it says.
They like that definition.
Right. An executive session, I don't know what that means.
That might
Then it
be
says-
code for strip club?
I guess, executive. And here we have the meeting adjourned at 5:45 p.m. So
Wow.
it took 2 hours and 45 minutes to
This
do
is
all
ridiculous minutes. There's like nothing going on in this meeting.
Right. But it took 2 hours and 45 minutes to consider an enormously complex restructuring where you've taken the largest piece of the Clinton Foundation, which is under investigation by the French government, out of the main body of the Clinton Foundation, spun it into a new entity. You've taken the Clinton Global Initiative, which had been formed in 2005, ran multiple meetings, even hosted Barack Obama in 2009, but files a false and materially misleading statement in August of 2010 saying it's not a successor. Same for Alliance for a Healthier Generation. It does the same thing. There's another thing we haven't even really talked about, which we will talk about, called C40 Large Cities Project, which is this Clinton climate change thing. They file another fraudulent form, and none of this is mentioned in the minutes. So either all of this happened in the executive session.
Yeah,
Right?
filed fraudulent form. They should put that down.
Right. And the other piece of it is that when you take this Clinton, the Chai thing, the old Chai thing, it was operating in, I want to say, 15, 20 countries around the world, all of which was illegal, both the soliciting and operating for that thing. And they had set up subsidiaries in places like Uganda and Tanzania and South Africa and India and Papua New Guinea and all this kind of stuff. And there's no record of any of these international transactions, the Bahamas, St. Lucia, et cetera, of how they would have transferred these various international assets into new international companies if they did in fact do that. So to try to memorialize, to have, due care, due obedience to the law, right? Due loyalty to the highest and best interest of the William J. Clinton Foundation. You cannot get that done in a 2 hour and 45-minute meeting.
Well, they probably ran out of scores bucks and had to check out of the VIP room.
Right. But this is one where if there are sentient attorneys general in the states, if there are people who care about the rule of law left, which maybe there aren't any, if there is anybody in the Justice Department who is not compromised, and at the FBI who's not compromised, you might start with this document, start pulling on some strings.
The board minutes.
And ask yourself, how do you accomplish all of this? How do you perfect all this after the final filing deadline? And how come none of the audits, in quotes, the financial audits for the main company or for any of these spin-outs were done by truly independent people? How come none of the state filing forms are right? How come none of the international filing forms are right? How come none of the supporting documents are in the 990? And how come they're soliciting actively? We've got this guy, Dennis Cheng, he leaves the State Department beginning July 2011. He's out there, mining all the contacts that have been gotten while Hillary was our still in this point, our Secretary of State, flying around the world, more than anybody else has ever flown,
Right.
supposedly. They're mining these contacts to raise an endowment. And how come nobody's checking on any of these conflicts?
Well, I want to talk about that in a minute, but we actually have a question here. I'm not sure if this is directly related, but Sam Wise wants to ask you, Charles, what about the Clinton Northern Ireland connection with the 2004 tax return? What can you say about that?
All right, so the Clinton, that's an interesting one. So what happened is the William J. Clinton International Peace Center was a project that came together, I want to say, either as Bill was winding up his second term or shortly thereafter. In Enniskillen, there was a bloody incident. That's in Northern Ireland, technically in the United Kingdom. This is different.
That'll be for next. This not to support what you're
Oh,
talking
okay. So Enniskillen was supposedly a charity to which the governments, I believe, of Ireland and the UK and other donors gave money. But at another moment, because it's a separate story, we will take you through the sad history of that place because the foundation was a piece of another operation, and it ultimately went defunct, and currently it is a for-profit operation in a very small, Enniskillen's a very small town. But that thing was a complete wipeout.
Did that whole situation have anything to do with that guy O'Brien who owns Digicel?
He was certainly, as a guest, one of the people who was consulted and may have given money to it, but O'Brien's interests are far more concentrated in the South Pacific and the Caribbean with Digicel. That's for another
Another conversation. Okay. What was the next piece you wanted to take a look at here?
I just, in the order in which they were up there.
Okay. So that would be this New York Times thing?
Yeah.
Or, yeah.
So I bring this up just to refresh everybody's recollection. This, I will make a shocking admission here. This is the day that I stopped reading the New York Times. And the reason and in particular stopped buying the Sunday edition of the New York Times, as a friend of mine told me, the only good thing about the Sunday edition of the New York Times is it's cheaper than cat litter. But May 23rd, 1993, so Hillary has been our first lady for, 4 months. And the cover picture, this is a magazine cover story, literally has a picture of her, I think in white, with the title, Saint Hillary. That's the approach the Times takes with a Democrat, an untested Democrat whose husband had won, I would argue, far from a mandate in the 1992 election, in that Ross Perot had, we all care about the popular vote, he had 19% of the popular vote. And much of that ate into George H.W. Bush's vote, and Bill Clinton wins. But they write this thing about Hillary Clinton calling her Saint Hillary, based on her record. Whereas look at how the New York Times trashes Melania Trump and the entire Trump administration.
I'm trying to find that image. It's strange, it doesn't seem to be there.
Well, for another moment, we'll get it up there. But anyway, we better move along a little bit.
Right.
So,
yes.
We turn then to a prime figure in the Sisterhood of the Traveling Pantsuit. And that is an accomplished woman named Kamiki Gibson. When you go to this page, and we'll have this link up for you, when you go to her, the doc, the one that you've got in the blue resume there,
yes.
You go to her resume, which I think you have as a PDF file.
Yes. Bringing that up now. I've got it up.
Okay. We learned that Kamiki Gibson began work for the Clinton Foundation as an outside counsel in May of 2008. And some of her work is described there. I guess you have it up in blue.
Yeah.
But she's doing work that seems to be, the way she describes it in her resume, now sometimes people do lie in their resumes, but in this one, she doesn't really talk about in this version of the resume what she was really doing. And we'll get to that in the next...
Well, what is it that she was really doing?
She was hired to take a look at the Clinton Foundation, and we see that in this next memo that I think is...
That's the zero hedge, right? Oh, no, right.
That's it, yeah.
Yep. Yeah, this blew me away. This was really shocking. So this is the... Sorry.
For some reason it's not loading.
Not loading. We got a lot of... Well, yeah, there it is. There it is.
Yeah, now... the zero hedge, in my mind, just for the crowdsourcers, zero hedge is the first thing that I check in the morning, actually, and the last thing I check before I go to sleep.
Huh.
And I mean it, unlike Barack Obama when he uses statements like that. This is an excellent organization because what they do is they find stuff that could be of interest if you're an investor or interested in politics or world affairs, and they do a quick summary of it, and then they provide you the source document, and there's a comment section. So their readership is very highly engaged. It's a lot like you crowdsourcers. And this, you'll see, November 6th, it was 2 days before the election. This Kamiki Gibson memo had come out, I think, even before then. But if you scroll down, there's Bruce Lindsay, and Bruce Lindsay had hired Kamiki Gibson, or the Clinton Foundation had hired Kamiki Gibson to prepare an external review. And this document that is attached here is marked, I think, as a draft. It's also marked, I believe it's marked...
It's way down at the bottom here.
Yeah, and it's lengthy. There we go. All right, so November 10th, 2008. And if you go to the very top, it's marked, I think it says, at the very top in the thing, it says draft.
Does it?
Yeah. There we go. confidential draft, November 10, 2008 draft. Now, sometimes what lawyers will do is they will prepare a draft document.
It also says attorney-client privilege, which means she can say whatever. And
Well,
doesn't-
that's just standard, I think. But it's interesting that this draft would have leaked out. Okay, that the Clinton Foundation would have been sloppy enough, and Podesta would have been sloppy enough to hold a memo like this, which is, I would argue, explosive. This is dated November 10th, so 2 days after the election. No, when was the election? 6 days after the election in 2008. And if we go further down, this is something that I think the crowdsourcers need to read carefully, because it's I want to say it's like 19 pages long. We're not going to go over all the 19 pages.
Right.
But in essence, what it says is you're totally screwed, to put it simply.
But this is their lawyer evaluating
This
the
is an
operation of their thing.
This is an external lawyer that is knowledgeable. This is not any old lawyer. This is Al Gore's. I mean, he did win a Nobel Prize.
He also invented the internet.
He invented the internet, and he's worth lots of money now. And he's single.
Right. His Tipper Gore went.
Is no more.
Is she dead?
She's very much alive.
But she left him. She was hanging out with Larry David or something, wasn't she?
That's
we'll talk about that in
different
another conversation.
If we keep going a bit further, and I'll tell you where tab A, I think, this is the executive summary. You're going to have to scroll down several pages. You'll get to tab A. Keep going. There you go. No, keep going. It's in the upper left. It'll say tab A.
Sometimes the real-time scrolling.
There you go. Outline of work to date. Okay? It says, I commenced this work in mid-September. Okay? Now, mid-September is shortly after the Democratic Convention in 2008. And it shows you what she has done. It says, review of all corporate documents, all. It doesn't say some. Right? Review of all corporate documents. Now, this is important because we're going to be talking about the New York State Code of Professional Conduct for lawyers. Okay? I reviewed all corporate documents, not some of them. Now, the report doesn't include any backup documents, she says. I will retain those documents in my files. Okay? And she has some of the comments with staff are confidential, she says. But she's begun work on this in September of 2008, i.e. before the election. Okay? So we could go to the next one. Now, this is something that I issued around September 8th, 2016. And it is a shameless promotion, but it does show you that this one got 11,300 Facebook shares through the present. We don't know, early on how many it got, but that's markedly more than the other one. And well before, two months before the 2016 election. So a lot of people looked at this, and it could be that part of what happened is that some of the
People
voters
read this.
actually read this.
Yeah.
And one would hope, perhaps, that some of the people in the IRS have read this, and that some of the people, let's say, in New York State Attorney General's office have read this, or maybe the U.S. Attorney in the Southern District or the Eastern District of New York, or maybe people in the line of the FBI, maybe people at the Sûreté in France, or MI whatever in England, in Australia and Sweden, et cetera, have actually read this, because this is a roadmap for how you get to the bottom of the very detailed, complex fraud that is still ongoing in my mind. If you go to the next, this again is something people should read in their leisure. We're not going to go through it now. Now, another shameless promotion, March 16th, 2015. This is the first thing I wrote on the subject. And actually, it got many more comments than 236. I wonder if Amazon got to this as well. But
I wonder what happened to the comments.
yeah, but you'll see the Facebook shares. This is 82,000 Facebook shares.
Wow, where does it show you that?
Upper left.
Oh, wow.
Okay, so 82,000 Facebook shares. The rough rule of thought that I've been told applies to whether something's Facebook shared is that for every 100 viewers, one person will Facebook share. It's a rough rule of thumb across many. Now, it may or may not be right, but this gives you a sense of how many people might have read this. And I guess most of them are not in the IRS not in the FBI, but
I'm
this
surprised
article,
there's no balloons in view. They look so delighted.
yeah. So this gives you a more succinct roadmap. This is what I initially found by March 16th, 2015. If we go to the next one, now this is Ginny Thomas, as it turns out. I'm very bad with names, and it didn't register with me who Ginny Thomas is, but she happens to be Clarence Thomas's wife.
Wow.
And she reached out to me and asked would I do an interview on the Clinton Foundation, which I did, and that one got 35,000 Facebook shares, half an hour. I did that. I went down to the sewer, Washington, D.C., and did this in the Washington, D.C. office of the Hillsdale College operation, and it was an honor, frankly, to meet Ginny and to talk the issues through. This appeared the weekend before the election, and I don't think that interview swayed the election, but it might in part affect our understanding of
What happened?
what happened. If we go to the next one, okay, this is very important. For people trying to understand, the official story in What Happened and other books by Hillary is that on one of these walks in the woods that they seem to love to do, and I'm sure are not stage managed and are, not,
They get accidentally tweeted by kind supporters.
nothing like that would ever happen. So the theory is that Hillary elected, the official story that's out there is that Hillary elected to join the Obama administration after the election. But when you look at this set of results, you'll see there are many different stories, but one of them explains that she finally conceded, I want to say around the 27th of August. That might be the next Google search result.
Yeah.
Oh no, that's different.
Oh no, that's interesting as well.
But one or more of these articles says that in August or thereabouts, Senator Hillary Clinton suspends roll call vote, August 27th, 2008. Okay, so around then she officially gives up the ghost. There have been a lot of rumors in that time, a lot of stories that were in these set of links, talking about how Hillary's supporters were angry that Barack Obama stole the nomination from her, and that the female supporters were going to get together on the floor of the convention and push her across the line. So, there was theory about that, and probably centered in such mainstream centers as the West Village, Berkeley, California, Cambridge, Massachusetts, and Aspen and other places. Anyway, the next one is interesting. Putting together a timeline here to try to understand what happened. Around August 14th, 2008.
This one struck me, Charles, because I hadn't heard about this guy, and what was he? He was the head of the DNC in Arkansas?
Right, and it was the Arkansas contingent in the Democratic Party that was talking about mounting this floor fight when this guy, I guess he gets killed on the 13th, and the guy who killed him dies in a shootout.
Right.
There were no antique rifles around and no fake suicide notes, but could it be that if real people went back into this, real members of the law and order wing of the FBI as opposed to the political wing of the FBI, went back into this and said, now, wait a minute. The
What
Clintons
happened?
are talking about challenging Barack Obama in a floor fight. This guy gets whacked. And the guy the whacker gets whacked. And suddenly, 2 weeks later, the Clintons are saying, okay, all right, we give up. We won't contest the election. This, to me, bears real investigation by the crowdsourcers, and as I say, the law and order wing of the FBI really should be looking at this hard.
Charles, I can't help but think about, we just recently did this story, and you brought this to my attention initially, the strange death of Peter Smith.
Yeah.
All these people who happen to, sort of die, and then we don't really know what happened.
Let's move it along a little bit here. So the next, okay. This gentleman, Michael Smith, is a wonderful human being based out in Asia. He roams around Asia, various places. He's Australian. He was a police detective. And he then became a media personality, originally in Sydney, I think, and then he goes around Asia. He put this together on September 6, 2016. And again, this is a lengthy document with lots of good links in it. And it explains some of what we've talked about in the past, gives you the details of how the Boston-based operation of the Clinton Foundation had its authority to operate in Massachusetts, where its headquarters was based, involuntarily revoked on March 31st, 2008. And this also talks about the antecedents to that operation, the so-called Clinton Foundation HIV/AIDS Initiative, which was put together on the 24th of March, 2004. There is no evidence that the Clinton Foundation has provided in the public domain that I see that this operation ever validly got its IRS federal tax exemption, or that it complied with applicable state laws and international laws to seek to gain approval to solicit and approval to operate in the various states and foreign countries where it began operating officially after March 24th, 2004.
How many charities would you say are out of compliance? Is it common or uncommon?
It's extremely uncommon.
Really?
So the larger the charity, the more uncommon it is. So you take a small charity that might have been soliciting $250,000 and only has like $3,000 left in its bank account. Such a charity, with no official employees, might have an excuse. I mean, it wouldn't be a helpful excuse, but you could try an excuse. This charity that has declared over $2 billion through all of its operations in the course of 20 years, operated by the former president and an aspiring president and all these fancy people on the board, all these fancy law firms and accounting firms, they have no excuses.
Just to touch on that excuse for a second. So like you're saying, if you're a small charity and you said, well, we did all this illegal reporting and it's a felony, right? To tax fraud, to raise money like that and not be registered as a charity, you're basically stealing money from the government.
Yeah, I mean, there's a long list, and we'll be doing this in a subsequent broadcast prior to the deadline, the looming deadline of November 15th, 2017, when they have to file.
Very soon.
Right. We will lay out the laws that spring to, I'm not a lawyer, but I can read. I'm not a lawyer, but I'm a reader.
Right.
And I can read the law, and I can see, a whole bunch of federal laws, including, you're not supposed to solicit contributions using the mail across state lines as a federal crime, or the internet across state lines, or telephones across state lines.
Oh, you're not supposed to even do that.
You're not supposed to solicit. Forget about actually collecting. You're not supposed to solicit, right? You're not supposed to convert government property, i.e. the contact list of the Secretary of State, to your personal benefit. You're not supposed to raise money from a bank across state lines on the basis of false and material financial statements. You're not supposed to make any false statements as a lawyer.
Right.
And there are quite a few lawyers involved in this.
Oh, yes.
Including,
I can think
trustees.
of lawyers that have made false statements.
Right.
But I mean, you might say that, someone who walks into a bank and robs the bank also committing a felony, but they had an excuse. They needed the money.
Right, but actually, it's charity law, the way I read it, and lawyers have told me, charity law is very, very strict normally, because you're not supposed to be operating with any for-profit motive. You're standing in the shoes of government, and ordinarily governments really frown on this type of activity, which explains why in Florida the U.S. attorney landing like a ton of bricks and has convicted already this former congresswoman, who's an African-American lady who had the misfortune to not have a last name of Clinton. And she awaits sentencing. She will be sentenced.
Oh, yeah, like 600 years or something?
Well, I think it was only 350 years, but when you're 69 years old, you're looking at 350 years, and we're not talking about, Club Fed. We're talking about, it's a very serious... Anyway, so we go to the next one. This is it, yeah. Again, this is another set of great work by Michael Smith, and I would encourage our crowdsourcing community to read this and follow the links again. This goes through Ira Magaziner, who holds himself out. He's a fellow rogue scholar, or Rhodes Scholar, with Bill Clinton, business czar. Bill still thinks he did a great job with Hillary and the first healthcare stuff. He's got a lot of famous clients, but this article is an embarrassment, frankly. It's an embarrassment.
Why is it an embarrassment?
Because, this is a smart guy, claiming ignorance, when there's no way he's ignorant about what actually happened here.
Well, it's just an excuse, obviously.
And it says here, look, in 2002, when we started our AIDS initiative, there's no record of any AIDS initiative being started in 2002 in the tax filings, or the state filings in Arkansas or anywhere else.
Well, he's just making it up.
Yeah, to see here, the all volunteers until 15 months.
BS, huh?
Remember the interns, all volunteers down at 77 Water Street?
Right, yeah. See, it's interesting when you actually hear the people working there say that.
Right.
And then, so there's a third one here from Michael.
Yeah, this is, I think he's referring here to, go down a little bit if you can. This is where I remember I say that it was dissolved March 31, 2008. And remember, Kamiki Gibson was a member of the bar, highly competent. Her whole resume is out there for you. She supposedly had all corporate documents. This is one of the corporate documents, and this shows that this thing was dissolved involuntarily. An involuntary revocation is a bad thing. You do not want your foundation to be involuntarily revoked in the middle of a presidential campaign. Okay, this is the largest piece by far of the Clinton Foundation. So a majority of its operations, but the headquarters state where this thing was based, where our Magaziner was running this thing around the world, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, principally a Democratic state, says, no, you can't operate. You're
Why
done.
did they say that? Because they knew it was illegal?
As a guess, there's no tax form that I see on file for 2005 in Massachusetts. Now, maybe it's hidden away, but we were able, through Michael Smith, to get the 2005 tax form that does prove fraud.
Ah.
And they've never filed the liquidation tax forms that are required for in 2006 or any subsequent year when they merged this entity into the parent foundation. So they never did their legal work properly, as far as I could tell, in that entity. So I'm mindful of the time.
Yeah, sorry. Well, more Michael Smith.
Right, so this is all, Michael Smith's a wonderful human being who does careful work. But here we see, remember I told you that this thing was revoked, yet they somehow managed, after the authority was revoked, to solicit money and get money and spend money from the government of Australia.
Ah.
And the Australians are so rich, they're rolling in it. Good day, mate.
Is that true?
No, they're not rolling in it. But the point is, it would seem that the Australian government, in part because there's a suspicion the prior Australian government leadership may be involved in foundations that are in league with the Clinton Foundation, and it's too embarrassing for the government of Australia to ask for their money back. But I think people in Australia, those Foster beer cans are not cheap. And you can't just be sending tens of millions of dollars to a crooked foundation run by a crooked former president.
Crazy.
But that is indeed what they did, and to date it seems like the Australian government doesn't seem to care.
Well, or they care a lot and they're trying to make it go away.
And then we get to, this is another one that our mutual friend, Utrice Lead, who's a wonderful journalist, does work with the Progressive Radio Network, has her own show called Lead Stories, and she makes the mistake of having me on from time to time. But she makes the point that the Clintons always seem to try to get involved in countries where there are poorer brown people, and Papua New Guinea is one of those countries. But believe it or not, Papua New Guinea is not that poor. It's just hopelessly corrupt. When you look on the corruption scale indexes, it's down there with, the top is, I don't know, Singapore, maybe in Switzerland, and Arkansas would be like...
Switzerland is corrupt?
Not in terms of being clean.
Ah.
It's, but there are like 200 countries ranked in these studies typically.
Where's the U.S. fall?
U.S. is down around 20 at this point. It used to be up in the top. And it depends, there's several different surveys.
It depends on who's president at any given moment.
Right, yeah. But down, Zimbabwe is down there at like 193 or something like that, and Papua New Guinea's right around there. It's
What is considered the most corrupt country in the world?
I don't know at this point in time.
Let's ask Google.
We'll look at another time. But
Yeah.
this is another case study, though, of in 2006, after the Clinton Foundation has illegally wound up a fake charity called Clinton Foundation HIV/AIDS. They're out there soliciting money and receiving money from the government of Australia to operate in Papua New Guinea. And that registration, this article recounts all the details of why that registration was a bold fraud.
They're not timid with their frauds.
Go big.
Go big or go home, yes.
So let's do the next one.
Next one.
Which is,
Oh no, we already saw that.
yeah, now this is our friend Stuart Dean, who was here last time. And he did an article a year ago connecting the Haiti fraud, which began, I would argue, before 2010, probably began around 2004, with what was going on in Papua New Guinea. And it says at the top here, this is take you about 10 minutes to read it. It's well done. And I put all this out there to just illustrate that this wasn't, an accidental process. This is a pattern and practice of using multiple fake charities, false front charities that are poorly controlled, if not controlled at all, to solicit money from governments that goes towards these charities and then disappears.
Well, I did find a Forbes list, I don't know if you're interested in seeing, of the most corrupt
Great.
countries in the world. It says North Korea is the number one.
Oh, that'd be Little Rocket Man.
Venezuela is number 10. Haiti,
Haiti
9.
is definitely corrupt.
Iraq, Sudan, Turkmenistan,
Big.
Uzbekistan,
Manhattan stand.
Afghanistan, corrupt. Well, all right, we could go on for days with that. Myanmar.
Yeah, let's keep going.
Keep going over here. Yeah. All right.
All right, so why did we want this one up here? We wanted this one up to pull up the 2007 annual report. Next one, not that.
Oops. Sorry.
The audited financial statements and Irs Forms 990, 2007. All right, now let's look at this audited financial statement here, right? Let's look at the table of contents. Next page. All right. Do we see this? Supplementary information, combining statement of financial position, combining statement of activities. File that away. Then we keep going to the next page, the letter. Note the date, December 12th, 2008. Okay? Then find me page 15 and page 16.
Sure.
Well, I'll just tell you, you can't, because it's omitted. It's intentionally omitted from this version of the Clinton Foundation audit.
Well, here's page 13.
All right. 14. Where's 15? There is no 15. Then look down here. Here you see these tax forms were in theory filed at the very bottom. It says 13 November 2008. You cannot file a tax form for a charity this big without an audit. Okay? And we saw that the audit was dated December 12th. Right? And it omits the combining statements. So then we go to the New York, I think is the next one New York State? The next link? No, skip that one. Yeah. All right, in EIN, punch in 31, please. Don't mean to be bossy.
No, that's fine.
1580204. It's right in there for you. And you hit search.
Oh, it's probably giving.
It'll come up. There you go. Then you hit Bill, Hillary, and Chelsea Clinton, the link there. That thing, yep. Then you hit, it'll come up, or we scroll down a bit, and you see 2007 further down. You hit on that link for 2007, the one 2 down from there. Yep, that one. And it'll come up in a second. You're going to have to hit on that, yeah. All right, here's the real filing, not the fake filing, okay? Now this you'll see is dated, signature 12/17/2008, Andrew Kessel and Stephanie Street. Stephanie Street in no way, shape, or form is the president of the William J. Clinton Foundation. She says her title is secretary. You can't sign the New York State tax form as the secretary. You have to have the real president sign it to be in compliance with New York law, okay? As we keep going down this, it says here, here's the name of a fundraiser. Keep going, please. And then government contributions grants. It says that there are no, it says not applicable for 2007, no government contributions of any type. This is a bold-faced lie. Never been corrected. We have documentary evidence of multiple government grants were sent towards this Clinton Foundation.
So this is another felony?
I don't know if it's a misdemeanor or a felony, but probably a felony.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I forgot I still have to do the felony counter.
That's what the kashing.
Yeah.
So we keep on going a little bit. This is really a fun one in here. We keep going. This is really juicy for we nerds, at least for me, the nerd. Okay. All right. So here we have the Irs Forum. We keep going a little bit. All right. This is, they changed their name. They say, we go down to the bottom of this first page. You see it's the same date stamp, okay? Now we go further down.
Where's the date? Oh, yeah.
All right, so this is the same as on the Clinton Foundation. But if you go further down till we get to the audit, it's going to be a good 30 pages later, probably. This is really hilarious, actually.
Let me know when you think I'm there.
Keep going. Yeah. You're almost there. You're almost home. There's no place like home.
It's true.
All right. The audited financial statements will be filed under separate cover upon their completion. Okay? We keep going down. Then we get a nice, this is dated December 19th, it was sent, right? Upon their completion. We know the audited statements were completed December 12th. So why would you send something in saying we're going to send you the audited financial statements when they're completed that was received on December 19th, 2008, because the thing had been completed a week beforehand? That's, in part, what happened. They intentionally omitted the audit. Now here's a letter dated December 15th, 2008. Stop on, if you will, for right here. And we see Mr. George E. Miller, Esquire, that means he's a lawyer, is in District of Columbia and Virginia, okay? Practice limited to matters and proceedings before federal courts and agencies. Okay, and then it says the single dagger, he's only a member of the Missouri Bar. So we select a firm that has, by its own admission, no knowledge of New York law.
Wow.
Okay, and this letter is dated December 15th, 2008. And if you go down a little bit into the body of this letter, it says, the auditors have been delayed in completing the audit. This is a letter dated December 15th, 2008.
I think you've shown me this before, yeah.
Okay, we will forward the audited financial statements just as soon as they are available. Now, December 15th, 2008 is approximately 2 days before the Clinton Foundation submitted a cumulative list of all of their donors, because Hillary had been surfaced as being Secretary of State, that shows multiple governments having donated.
Right.
Government of Australia, government.
Pretty obvious conflict of interest.
Well, but also a lie. You know, in their 990, they don't say that they have any. They say they have no government contributions for 2007, and in the New York State forms through 2007, all that have been submitted, they claim no government contributions of any kind.
And wasn't there an article in here that you had sent me that was all about how she met with Obama to talk about there's no conflicts of interest?
We'll get to that in a second.
Okay,
yeah.
sorry.
So if we keep on going down, this says December 15th, the audit's not ready. Bold-faced lie sent through the mail across state lines. This would be a felony crime.
And he's a lawyer.
And he's a lawyer, in theory.
We see a lot of that.
All right, and then here's a new one, January 14th. Okay, please find herewith the audited financial statements. A month ago, we sent the registration. We promised to send the audit just as soon as they are available. And herewith, they give the audit, but they broke their own promise. The audit was available December 12th. Okay, why did they wait until January 14th?
Why?
What happened on January 13th? Hillary Clinton went before her fellow senators and gave testimony about the state of the Clinton Foundation and got green lighted to be Secretary of State.
So they were just sort of waiting on this until that happened.
Because this audited financial statement, we won't do it now because we're, I think, running low on time. But this set of audited financial statements, when you look at the combining pages, which we're about to do, all right, here's the real audit, and you go to the very last 2 pages of the whole thing.
Is it a huge document?
It's only 16 pages left. We're going to now show you, this is in New York State, the information which the Clinton Foundation intentionally omits from its website, even now. The combining statements, and we will show you why they do this.
They don't want to go to jail?
Yeah. Here it is. I don't know if you could turn this. If you can't, it says rotate. You can rotate it.
Where is it? Oh, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Now look at this. This is the balance sheet of the whole foundation, right? This is prepared if you go just a little bit the other way, just so we can see that, yeah. Combining statement of financial position, right? We nerds would know that this needed to say consolidated statement of financial position. Combining statement is not the correct way to do this. Combining statement does not remove necessarily all the intercompany accounts properly. Okay, there should be, for each of these entities, then should be an intermediate step where you add them up, and then there should be consolidation and elimination line. They didn't do it that way. If you make it smaller again, though, you'll see in cash and cash equivalents, okay, for the total it's 85 million. Chai has 48 million out of 85 million of the cash at December 31st, 2007.
It's a lot of cash, Charles.
It's a lot of cash, right? It's very clearly a big piece of the puzzle. And the only reason, if we go make it smaller again, the only reason that the foundation is so big is that the biggest asset, property and equipment net of accumulated depreciation, 124 million, that's the bulk of the foundation. And in a subsequent broadcast, we will be going in great depth explaining why that number is completely fraudulent and overstated.
It's big.
Okay? So that's on the balance sheet side at December 31st, 2007. If you go to the next one, which I hope they also rotate. Yeah. Now look at the size of this. Chai's revenues, total revenue gains and other support, 80 million out of 132 million. Okay? 80 million. And 83 million of expenses, and it lost 3.5 million. It's highly material, this old Chai. It obviously existed in 2007. We have documents that show it existed through 2008 and through 2009. But yet these pages are purposefully omitted from the Clinton Foundation version of the audit that is on their website. Because a monkey with no accounting training could look at this and say, looking at this, looking at the column Chai there, could say, Chai certainly existed, you know, and then a monkey could go and get in contact with the government of France and see the public document shows the government of France was by far and away the largest donor to Chai, starting in 2006 through Unitaid, and the government of France opened an investigation into Chai, which is a matter of public record, that shows all kinds of violations.
Did this,
And then you look at the categories of expenses. We need not, dwell on it too much, but you look for Chai, out of the 83.7 million of expenses, they're spending 20.7 million on professional and consulting fees.
wow.
To whom?
Kamiki Gibson must have had a very high retainer.
I don't know.
Charles, does this have anything to do with that thing where they were charging people for plane tickets to France? There was some fee on every plane?
Yeah, absolutely. That's the Unitaid. Unitaid is this how do you call it, NGO that was created, came together by 2006, September 19th, 2006, I believe, from memory. And various countries fund it in various ways. France funds it by taking a little bite, a mordida, out of the plane tickets and other transportation tickets of travelers passing through France. Norway takes it a different way. UK takes it yet another way.
But they're ripping off everybody who goes to France.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So going then to the next one quickly. whichever one it is. All right. This is Valerie Jarrett. This was the archive account her archive Twitter account, where she referred to herself as VJ44. And some would argue that she was the real president of the United States, the brains behind the operation.
Really?
Some argue that, and here's her own archived account. We go to the next page. Okay, this is the document. Remember the dates that I gave you before? December 12th is the audit, December 17th is the list. This is December 18th, 2008. This is, I believe, from John Kerry, for some reason. I think he was chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, conveying this MOU, this Memorandum of Understanding. If we look,
They love the MOU, Charles.
you gotta love it. Yeah, John Kerry and Dick Lugar. But if you go to the next page,
the next page of this document.
Yeah, keep going, please. This is the text of it. Keep going to the very end. We'll dwell on the document a little bit in the next version. Keep going to the signature page.
It's scrolling a little bit slowly, I think, because we have
We're working it too hard.
Yeah, that's right.
It's like Roscoe, the bedbug dog. Okay, you see Valerie Jarrett has signed this thing, and look at that 12-16-08. Okay, look at the 2 in the 12-16-08. Does that 2 look funny to you? Does it look like the 2 might have been written over a 1? I will stipulate this is a forgery.
Wow.
And we
Wait,
will go,
sorry,
and also I draw your attention.
Sorry, people can't quite see that because of the positioning. The document doesn't want to cooperate.
I'd also draw your attention, there you go.
Now wait, so we're talking about this 12 right here.
That
You're
2.
saying,
Well, I'll show you
I agree. Look at how heavy the mark is here and here. It looks like it's just a handwritten 11, and then someone has lightly filled in 2.
Because, if this document were negotiated on November 16th, 2008, 12 days after the election, scant day, I think Valerie Jarrett was only made co-chair of the Obama-Biden presidential transition team several days before November 16th, okay? Let's go to the next document, sir, please. Okay, this is a version that was provided to Judicial Watch, okay, pursuant to a subpoena, okay? So this better be correct, and I've checked with Judicial Watch myself. They claim this is the authentic Memorandum of Understanding. And go to the same page 4, and let's see what we see. Do we see a 12 or an 11?
This one goes up to 11, you think?
Go 4 pages.
Yeah, I'm trying to.
Take a look at that.
Oh, look at that. And is it the same person's handwriting?
It is. That is a clean, you look at that, I'm no signature expert, but every stroke in that date is the same intensity, the same width, and it sure looks like Valerie Jarrett's own, she's the one who put the date there. Right?
I love it, Charles.
Right?
Yeah.
So, again, members of the Law and Order Division of the FBI, the various state attorneys general, how did Valerie Jarrett, and now let's go back up to the beginning. How did Valerie Jarrett, by the 16th of November, fresh off the heady experience of winning this election, gain enough confidence to sign this document, November 16, 2008, which says, for example, in background on the Clinton Foundation, further down a little bit, see this, a single entity, the William J. Clinton Foundation is, it doesn't say could be, it says is a 501c3 charitable organization comprised of the Presidential Library and 7 initiatives. That was not true on that date. It was not true. And then we keep going to the next page.
Doesn't she live with the Obamas now in that big giant
apparently
gray house?
In one of the mansions, or the Obama mansion collection. If we keep going down a little bit, see, Clinton HIV/AIDS Initiative. That's the thing I was talking about, right? And here we see. Look at this is dated November 16th, 2008. Right? Did the accountants see this?
I don't know.
Because this says, CHI's work is made possible in part by the dedicated governments around the world who are contributing and supporting Chai's efforts, including Australia, Ireland, Great Britain, Sweden, Canada, France, Denmark, Norway, and the Dominican Republic, as well as the countries who support UNITAID, a consortium of more than 20 countries. How do you sign this document on November 16, 2008, and get an audit signed on December 12, 2008, and send in a 990 to the IRS on November 13, 2008, and state forums in New York and California and other states saying you have no government support? How do you do that?
No one's looking, obviously, or people just, I don't know.
I know how you do it.
How?
You have a friend, a member of the Sisterhood of the Traveling Pantsuit
Yeah, who's that?
Operation, Lois G. Lerner.
Of course, we couldn't fit her in the graphic.
Right.
And so what is Lois Lerner? What is her role? She's the head of the IRS?
No, she's the head of the division of the IRS at this moment. She would have been the head of the division of the IRS that actually regulates charities like the Clinton Foundation, all charities.
And where is she today?
Well, she was drummed out in May of 2013 for possibly, some would argue, targeting Tea Party people. There she is.
Huh. Well, the people I've met in the Tea Party have been very friendly.
Right. That's right. You were a star recently out in New Jersey.
Well, I don't know about that. I was a guest speaker over there. So why was she targeting the Tea Party?
Well, we would be speculating, but let's go back into the flow of the
Sure.
other ones. Just to,
Oh.
not that. No, don't, try not to. Yeah, don't hit any of those X's. Not that. Not that. That. Okay. This just happened. She was cleared of targeting by the Trump Justice Department. This is inexplicable to me.
Right.
You know, it suggests to me the only explanation I have would be that Trump does not yet actually have control of his own Justice Department. That it's staffed by holdovers. That these are the analogy would be like years after World War II, when you go through the South Pacific and you encounter these Japanese military guys in the jungle.
They don't know the war's over yet?
Yeah, I mean, we may have such people in the IRS. This is inexplicable. I mean, this really is indefensible, inexplicable, and this is something Steve Bannon and many Americans, frankly on the right and the left, should be outraged over this, because if you can get away with corrupting the IRS to have somebody like Lois Lerner in a very top position, on the one hand, make it very difficult for right-leaning conservative groups to get approved and to operate and to solicit, while on the other hand, you have a rogue, false front international charity scheme, still to this day run by the Clinton cronies. This is indefensible.
Well, Charles, Periscope is speculating that Lois Lerner was given immunity. What do we know about that?
I'm not a lawyer, but my understanding is that it is not possible to get blanket immunity. Right? The only way, I believe, you could get a presidential pardon, and I don't think those have to be published. So I don't believe she received a presidential pardon. Most immunity deals contain stipulations in them where you admit to certain things, and so we would need to see that if she does have such an agreement. Let's keep going to the next one. Okay, this is amusing. This is really amusing. This is something that came out on November 16th, 2015. This is a backup sheet to a statement by Donna Shalala, whatever her name is, who was acting president of the Clinton Foundation. And it says here, this quote is attributable to Kathy Connealy. Now, Kathy Connealy is described as the former Assistant Attorney General for the Tax Division of the U.S. Department of Justice. Go to the top. Who now is the chair of civil and criminal tax litigation in DLA Piper's Global Tax Group.
We've heard so much about DLA Piper.
Right. But to say ordinarily, law firms don't work like this. Law firms, when they give an opinion, they do it on their stationery, and it says DLA Piper opinion. You don't have to say, this quote is attributable to that's weasel language.
Right.
Right?
Maybe they're weasels.
What's going on?
No, nothing. I'm just making it so that hopefully it'll perform a little better because we're done with those.
Okay.
And it's making it real slow. I was trying to, help it move along more quickly there.
All right. So it says this says that I advised the foundation that it had no legal obligation to file amended returns. Okay? That is preposterous advice. That is, I'm not a lawyer, but the public record is out there. You have an ironclad duty under multiple laws to correct false and materially misleading statements. And if she gave this kind of advice, in her capacity as a partner of DLA Piper, that is a big problem for DLA Piper, in my opinion, because it's indefensible.
So what's the number one, DLA Piper I've heard about so much. What's the number one kind of corrupt thing that they did? Why do we keep hearing about them?
Well, there's, people make the point that James Comey's brother may work, DLA Piper is like Goldman Sachs. It's a very big law firm. It's, I forget exactly, it's a merger of two big firms, and it operates all over the place. In the UK, it's very prominent. I knew the former, I don't know if he's still a managing partner or whatever they call him now, at DLA Piper in America, but in the UK, it's very tight with Tony Blair, very prominent internationally.
I think I've seen their webpage before.
Yeah. But maybe we can go back to that.
Okay, yeah, sorry.
And so this statement is, we will be getting into this in great depth with exhibits, is indefensible. And we go to the next page. All right, we learned recently that Robert Mueller has gotten together, his team is now 16 seasoned prosecutors, okay? Now, we don't know how many senior level people have been allowed through into positions at the Trump Justice Department. But as a guess, the Trump Justice Department probably has fewer than 16 senior level people already confirmed. Why does Mueller need 16 prosecutors? Why is it reasonable to be investigating still the way they're investigating? It sure looks like a political witch hunt to me, involving people who are compromised. We know, we've talked about this before, Robert Mueller and James Comey were in senior positions when the FBI and the Justice Department, when the FBI and the U.S. attorneys had grand juries impaneled looking at the Clinton Foundation, and I don't mean to pick on these people, they're probably nice people, but like the people in the Boston office of the FBI who, when the Russians said, "You got a problem with the Tsarnaev brothers," they said, "Oh, they're okay." Here we have, a similar situation, I would argue, that in Mueller, in Comey, and in Rosenstein, who did not get to, in my judgment, to the heart of the Clinton Foundation fraud.
Well, they're doing nothing.
Well, when he was U.S. Attorney in Baltimore, Maryland, when you had laureates based there,
Rosenstein was investigating the Clinton. Oh, I thought you meant about what he's doing now. Why did they ever hire him if he failed to do anything last time?
I don't know. I mean, this is what I'm wondering. And it sure looks to me as, we talked about when Valerie Jarrett, got flummoxed, I would argue, by the Clinton Foundation in the transition. You're coming in, it was an upset victory in Trump's case. Now you've got a seat of government. You got the deep state. You got all the holdovers who are up in arms. It's tough to put that government together. And I think that Donald Trump got his head handed to him by Mueller, Comey, and Rosenstein. And we know that Jason Chaffetz was on Jeanine Pirro last night suggesting that, Sessions is maybe, not really doing what he should do to follow the evidence, follow the facts, check them against the law, and do the people's business in bringing justice in this against this gigantic rogue charity scheme. So if we go to the next slide. Okay, this is interesting. I sent this to you recently, and
last minute update.
A last minute update, and I think on page 6 of this.
Not the gossip page.
Exactly. You'll see the little I at the very bottom there. Fraud or fraudulent denotes, fraud or fraudulent denotes conduct that is fraudulent under the substantive or procedural law of the applicable jurisdiction or has a purpose to deceive, provided that it does not include conduct that, although characterized as fraudulent by statute or administrative rule, lacks an element of scienter, deceit, intent to mislead, or knowing failure to correct misrepresentations that could be reasonably expected to induce detrimental reliance by another. Now, this is a general statement, and actually the New York charity law is specific and removes the requirement to show scienter.
What is scienter?
That means knowing. I believe it's a Latin word, and it means, you'll look it up and you'll tell us. Now, I sent you, Jason, there's 2 other page numbers. From memory, I don't remember off the top of my head. I think it was like 132.
Scienter is a legal term that refers to intent or knowledge of wrongdoing. This means that an offending party has knowledge of the wrongness of the act or event prior to committing it.
But the specific law that governs charities and charity solicitations,
Even if you didn't know.
yeah, you're still...
So this is a James Comey moment where
right, exactly.
proving intent.
Right. It's important, it's important to use a lawyer who actually knows New York law in looking at this.
Or what they're doing at all.
So, one suggestion is you might not want to use George Miller.
Right.
But anyway, back on this, I think I sent you, I don't know if you can access it in my email, I say the next page number, but there's, in this long document, and maybe we'll just simply put a link up later, they state that lawyers absolutely must tell the truth, right? And they explain that.
Sorry, that's the wrong one.
We'll do that at another time, just because it's...
Brief additions.
You sent that to me.
Yes. No, this is the New York Bar Code of Professional Conduct. Yeah. No, that'll be...
We'll do that
find
at another
that next time. Yeah.
So I think, are we at the
That was the last one.
exciting conclusion of the presentation? Do we have any new things to tell the audience about stuff that may be coming out?
Well, we got to leave that for the great foretell, I
All right.
think, to foretell the future. But this has been a very interesting presentation, Charles. I mean, it's just crazy how every week it's just felony after felony after felony. I mean, I've heard Lionel ask you this. I grow tired of asking this. When will somebody do something?
Well, I think we're heading now towards November 15th, 2017. And by November 15th, 2017, the Clinton Foundation must file tax returns for 2016. It's my contention that they can't do that without amending all of their tax returns going back to October 23, covering the period October 23, 1997 to the present. Right?
Yeah, but it's my contention that they'll just do whatever the hell they want.
Well, I don't know about that. I think, at this point, lawyers, I would guess, I'm just guessing, lawyers are involved because there's some very rich trustees who have unlimited liability here. You don't...
Bill Gates.
You don't have... Well, Bill Gates isn't a trustee of the Clinton Foundation, but trustees of the Clinton Foundation, who are not indemnified if you are committing fraud and if you're failing to really check what's going on here. And by doing these broadcasts and going on this campaign for as long as I've been, there is definitely awareness in the public,
Growing
awareness, that this is an unprosecuted fraud. So the way that you attempt to limit your downside is you acquiesce to the appointment of a conservator. That would be the smart thing for them to do, to say, I'm not doing this anymore. I didn't know. I tried to do my job. I was frustrated. Here's the evidence that I tried.
They didn't have scienter.
Yeah, the Clintons stiff-armed me, and I was told that I had no liability. I'm from the Sudan, or I'm from wherever I am, and that would be one approach for a trustee to say, listen, I want out. Now, there has been a tremendous amount of turnover. We've talked about how Eric Braverman, a very smart guy,
Right.
He looked at this mess and said, I'm out of here, right? And there are rumors that Eric Braverman has, in fact, been talking to government authorities. We can't confirm those, but there are rumors.
Do you have any idea where Eric Braverman is?
I don't.
Last seen in Oxford.
Yeah.
Scurried into an elevator.
Is that right?
Oh, you didn't see
I'm
that
just
episode where we went? Yeah, he was speaking at the Blavatnik School of Government. Trish Negron and I went there to meet with him. Speaking of stiff-armed, they physically blocked me as he exited the room. Some dude handed him a cell phone, so he was like on the cell phone as he was leaving, so he couldn't speak. Went into an elevator. Multiple people blocked me in the hallway. I pressed on towards the elevator. Oxford security physically grabbed me and prevent me from entering in the elevator. And I said, "Get your hands off of me." And the guy said, I don't have my hands on you. I said, "Why are you grabbing me?" He said, "I'm not grabbing you," as he was physically holding me. Elevator went up. Nobody's seen Mr. Braverman since then.
Right. So when we look at the state of these disclosures, and when we get a real lawyer, not George Miller, but somebody who understands New York law and California law and UK law and Canada law and French law and all these international laws, you get a real team on this. You go ahead and you file. I mean, what is that? What is the movie? Do you feel lucky? File.
Dirty Harry.
Dirty Harry. Do you file a tax return for the Clinton Foundation on November 15th, 2017 that doesn't amend the prior filings? That's not going to be very good at the sentencing. Not going to be good at all.
Didn't George Miller direct Mad Max?
I don't know if that's its common name.
That's true. No, yeah, it's a different George Miller.
But anyway, I think we should congratulate the art department. I don't know how carefully people have looked at this.
That's a very busy art department.
But I'm particularly find the handcuffs to be interesting, and the way in which they do not cover up Chelsea Clinton's eyes. Speaking of cover-ups, Chelsea Clinton is by all accounts, an accomplished person with multiple degrees, expert on various international health issues.
Is that true?
In theory. She's written multiple books and been paid for them. And, you'd like to think, I understand why a child, an only child in particular, would just do what her parents told her to do out of deference to her parents. On the other hand, it is a different generation. And, she can't claim ignorance. She's been around this, for a long time. Why is she using alias emails? Why was a family member like her
Reynolds
put in a position of such great power at an earlier age, back in 2010-11 timeframe, into something called a public charity? This is supposed to be standing in the shoes of government. This isn't the Clinton Family Foundation. They actually have one of those. They have something called the Clinton Family Foundation, which is a
How
smaller.
many foundations do these guys have?
I don't know. Some people collect cars. They collect foundations.
Wow.
But she's been associated with the Family Pocket, the Clinton Family Foundation, that was set up in, I think, December of 2001. She's been affiliated with that one way or another. That's a much smaller operation. But actually, their filings are somewhat better, except they have the problem that they've contributed money to the Clinton Foundation when it was illegally organized and operating. So it is tainted as well, in my view.
Wow. Charles, I don't know if the people viewing right now have noticed this, but we've had a technological upgrade today.
Really?
We have digital sound input now that should hopefully be eliminating some of the noise problems that we've experienced in the past.
So the tech department's been busy too.
Everybody's busy. A lot of people feel that they have the right to ask, and I think these are trolls. The people that have been our generous sponsors are very generous and understand that what we're doing here is searching for the truth by speaking with experts like yourself, dealing with evidence, firsthand testimony, legal documents, filed tax documents, that kind of thing. We're not sitting here making this up. We're not trying to tell people we're a 501c3, but we do need money to operate, to buy things like this digital audio interface. And I hope that people who enjoy the broadcasts will become sponsors of the program by going to paypal.me and searching for Crowdsource the Truth. I've got the URL on screen right now, and we always put it into the show notes. You can also become a regular sponsor on Patreon by searching for Crowdsource the Truth. And we've also just put up the Crowdsource the Truth merchandise store, where people can get lots of interesting merchandise, Podfather mugs, where I've certainly taken images of public figures and modified them to make them derivative works and parodies. So I do believe we have the legal rights to use these images, and there's always interesting stuff being added to the merchandise store. There's lots of good Sunday with Charles material, lots of good Great Fortell t-shirts. People can get Great Fortell mugs, Great Fortell, diaries,
Tablets, yeah.
tablet covers, all kinds of wonderful, wonderful merchandise that can be purchased there at the Crowdsource the Truth merchandise store. So people who are fans of this program, people who are fans of the Great Fortell, they got a lot of good stuff there. Charles, anything else you want to add before we go?
No, thanks so much for having me on.
It's always a pleasure, and people can, of course, learn more about you by going to charlesortel.com.
And following me on Twitter.
Follow you on Twitter, of course. I apologize I didn't have that Twitter page up. We can put that up. Where can people find you on Twitter, Charles?
It's a very creative and difficult to remember name, at Charles Ortel.
There you go. You're
And
coming up right away when I...
And I'm noticing that thanks to my appearances with you, that my Twitter following is growing.
That's wonderful. I'm very pleased to hear that.
Thank you.
So hopefully people will follow you there on Twitter for all the latest updates on the unprosecuted financial crimes.
And this is the thing I was just talking about. You see this?
Oh, yes.
This is
The
the
bombshell.
Janine Pirro. You go on my site, you can click on what we were talking about. This is quite interesting. Janine Pirro, I've had the great pleasure of being on her show a few times, and I'm in touch with her. She's a real, very insightful person. There's a real feminist, Janine Pirro, not a fake feminist.
Very good. All right, Charles. Well, I'll see you soon. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you,
Have
sir.
a great weekend, everybody. See you later.